all, long time no see. I'm back, okay? And I want to talk about Blackpink's new EP Deadline and why it is not being received very well and why you guys should not be surprised at the product that we got, okay? So Blackpink just released a new EP called Deadline. It has a whopping 5 songs on it, bringing their total catalog song total to 39 songs overall, which by comparison, Twice, which is a group who debuted in a similar time frame, has 170 songs. 170. And Mamamoo, also their contemporaries, currently not even active right now, 120 songs. So 39 is pathetic, right? This EP only has a handful of songs, and also it doesn't really sound like Blackpink in general. And in general, it feels like a cash grab. But guess what? Let me tell you something. It is a cash grab. And that's always what it was going to be. If you really understood what happened to Blackpink contract negotiations, you would understand that. So let's go over the backstory of it all, and hopefully you guys will gain some understanding. So let's get started, okay? So when Blackpink were negotiating their contract, Blackpink were in literally their imperial era, right? K-pop contracts, for those of you who may not know, are typically 7 years in length. That's something that the Korean government basically decided that they could be no more than 7 years. So most contracts have to be renegotiated after 7 years. And at that 7-year mark for Blackpink from when they debuted, which was 2016, that puts them at, that was 2023 when their contract was expiring. And at that moment, Blackpink was in their imperial era, okay? Born Pink had been released the year before. They were on their Born Pink tour. They were headlining Coachella. Like, they were at the maximum demand, maximum visibility, really, really, really had fully broken through to the West and had fully established themselves as global fucking superstars, right? So they were negotiating from a position purely of strength. Comparatively, YG, the company that oversees Blackpink, run by this fellow, Yang Hun-suk, okay, who, that's his name, he's the namesake of the company, okay, was negotiating from a relative position of weakness, okay? Yang Hun-suk had recently had to step down as CEO due to his prison sentence that was deferred, he hasn't served it yet, for the whole Burning Sun scandal. And the Burning Sun scandal happened with one of the YG boy groups, Big Bang, where one of the members ran this club and basically, I don't know, look into the Burning Sun scandal. Stephanie Sue of Rotten Mango did a really excellent video on it, but be wary of watching it. Trigger warning, I could have listened to K-pop for like 9 months after I watched that. But anyway, all that happened under YG, right? And the YG had attempted to launch this new girl group, Baby Monster, that basically paralleled and echoed Blackpink in a lot of ways. Like, you know, Chiquita was meant to be a Lisa echo, Ion's meant to be kind of like a Jennie echo and whatever, and tried to kind of recapture the magic in a group in a newer, younger, hotter version. But it didn't really land because the whole girl crush concept is kind of washed at this point. So that didn't really work. So really, all YG really had to keep the lights on was Blackpink, right? So Blackpink had all the leverage. But this is a guy who really has thrived off of controlling them and sort of suppressing their artistic output. So he was not, the basically negotiations were very arduous, and they went on for a very long time. And at the end of the day, eventually they broke down. That's what happened. The negotiations broke down, okay? What happened was they were very drawn out. They went over for a very long time. And for the entire time, Lisa and Jennie, there was always a lot of rumors talking about how they were planning to do their solo activities outside of YG, right? But it was never, nothing was ever confirmed. And there was a bunch of announcements saying, oh, you know, the negotiations are ongoing. We're hopeful to get to a good resolution, like blah, 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 blah. But eventually what ended up happening is that Jennie announces Atelier, which was a major turning point. The following day, which felt almost retaliatory, suddenly YG says, okay, well, none of the Blackpink girls are going to be doing their solo stuff under the company anymore. Basically, it felt like he was just basically throwing a fucking temper tantrum. It was kind of unfortunate because Rosé had already said that she was going to work under the Black label and had already basically announced that she was signing under them, which kind of left her in a lurch, right? Because at the time, the Black label, which is a subgroup of, was a sub-label of YG, was like very much directly under the YG. They were all in the same building. But then eventually what ended up happening is through this whole fallout, Teddy and the Black label actually separates and now is a separate, is like they're still affiliated in some ways, but is now a separate entity from YG in general. And in general, what it really felt like, it was like retaliatory and intended to punish the girls. So what ended up happening is that YG had no control over any of the girls' solo activity or any of the money they made on a solo basis. And they only had control over the girls. And I think it's hard to know what the terms of the contract were. It was never really fully made public. But I remember the rumors either saying that it was 2 albums in 1 world tour or 2 world tours in 1 album. Either way, what the girls are doing with Deadline is a proper contractual obligation with a company and a man who they could not come to an agreement with, right? So this EP itself is not an artistic project. It is mainly a cash grab for YG in order to keep his stock price from going into total free fall, okay? And that's what it is. And that is all it is, okay? And you have to understand that through much of Blackpink's existence, there was very strong creative restrictions under YG, right? He really limited the artistic input from the members. They basically had this like weird ass scarcity strategy where they basically released very little music in order to maintain basically a lot of gravity for each comeback and make it an event and sort of maximize profits. And yeah, that strategy worked like early on in Blackpink, but ultimately after a while, it really started to look like limited or wasted potential, right? Because like, especially after Blackpink, the album, there was a lot of demand for Blackpink and people really wanted to hear more from them and see more from them. But but YG did not let them release music. And sometimes I cannot help but think it was to sort of sabotage them and neuter their potential. I don't know. That's just my opinion, allegedly for entertainment purposes only. I don't really know. But that model in general created a lot of frustration with the girls creatively. And they also were not allowed to really creatively contribute to the albums as they were. They weren't really allowed to songwrite. They weren't really allowed to produce, and their ideas were not necessarily included, right? So because of that, that created a lot of frustration under the YG umbrella, which made the girls not want to continue to do their solo work inside of YG. And this whole concept of creative control has always been a sore point and source of tension within the company, and is just simply worse now that he has completely lost all control. So of course he's going to assert as much control as possible in the one single avenue that he has control over. You know what I mean? Allegedly, obviously, allegedly for entertainment purposes only. And at the end of the day, though, the problem is that YG is totally financially reliant on Blackpink, okay, essentially, right? They are basically the financial backbone of YG till this day, and they have not been able to successfully pivot. They tried the All Day project, but it's way too much cultural appropriation. They've tried Baby Monster, but Baby Monster, I think, was meant to be a replacement group for Blackpink, but they have not seen the same success that Blackpink is seeing. But the group, Blackpink, generated the global visibility and revenue that YG's projects have subsequently since struggle to recreate. And so the loss of solo control really exposes how dependent YG really was on the group's continued success. And that is why you're seeing this Deadline album be such a cash grab, because it's not really about art. It's about keeping the fucking lights on. You know what I mean? And I really think you can tell that just by seeing the name of the album. I mean, Deadline, come on. When they announced the Deadline tour, okay, I did not dignify that tour with the response because, first of all, they had not released any new fucking music, right? And I had already seen Bored Pink twice, actually. Saw it twice. I am, in fact, a card-carrying Blink, okay? So don't at me. I'm a proper Blink, right? But I knew that there was, like, no new music release. So I was like, what are they really going to be showing me that I haven't already seen? And if I really want to see these girls in concert, I would want to go to their own show in general, right? As opposed to going to, like, a Blackpink show. So I didn't go to the Deadline tour. And it purely was, I think that he called it Deadline because he literally was on a deadline. There's probably only a limited amount of time that he is allowed to even work with these girls, or the girls are really only allowed to be solo for a calendar year, which is when they released, Jennie released Ruby, Rosé released Rosie, Jisoo released her EP, and Lisa released Alter Ego, right? With obviously Rosé's being the most successful overall because of ABT, right? And ultimately, the tour felt very much like phoned in, and it was heavily tied to their contractual obligations. And I think that this EP is simply a reflection of that heavy tie to contractual obligations, right? I think that the title Deadline is also very on the nose, just like I said it was for the tour, right? And it really is just something that is basically meant to check a box. And I really feel like the girls kind of phoned it in, right? Because they know that they're never going to get the creative release that they wanted from the Blackpink project itself. And they know that they need the Blackpink project, obviously, because it's like that's really where they're at their highest powers and the most visible. But at the same time, they're not creatively invested in it because they've been creatively stifled with it. And they've also experienced what it really is to create real art that has their voice and their footprint and their fingerprint on it. So I'm sure they're going to be even more disengaged from the Deadline EP itself, right? And I mean, for me, I knew what I was expecting. I knew it was going to be some fucking bullshit, right? That I knew it was just going to be some type of cash grab. So for me, the EP is not bad. The only thing that I think is a disrespectful ass slap in the face is that there's only 4 really new songs, including Jump, right? So five including Jump. And the songs are pretty experimental. They don't really have that quintessential Blackpink sound. But that said, I think that the Go music video was like really cool, really amazing, right? And I also like Champion. I think it's like a really cute anthem. Me and My Girls, girl, I don't know why they were working with Dr. Luke, but I can't help but think that once again, allegedly for entertainment purposes only, that somehow I really do think that YG be like a jealous boyfriend with these girls. You know what I mean? In a sense where I feel like he be doing things that purposely is intended to sabotage their name and their reputation to diminish them overall because he doesn't like to see them succeed outside of the group. But that's just my opinion. I really don't know if that's true or not. That's just my thought, okay? No, it's giving jealous ex who never wants to see you succeed with anybody else, okay? That's a vibe. And anyway, here's the thing. YG's over, right? I'm not gonna lie. YG, you will crumble. Okay, that's my vibe. That's how I feel about YG. But anyway, YG, their whole stance is very archaic, right? They're stuck in this whole girl crush, hip hop, cultural appropriation model, which really is not really flying for K-pop as it transitions like into the West. Right now, K-pop was going the direction of New Jeans, and well, I mean, New Jeans obviously is imploded too. But even like Cat's Eye, right, which is a global girl group where there's people who actually look like what the world looks like now, right, in it. And then there's also, even like Twice has a whole like proper K-pop angle going where there isn't this sort of like built-in offensiveness where it comes to like offending like Black culture. And aespa is another group that is like heavily conceptually driven, right? So what YG's model has not evolved with the times. You know what I mean? To be honest, the Deadline EP represents the most experimental and most interesting music I've seen out of YG in general, but it's also kind of like phoned in because it's just not what Blackpink is fully capable of, So I do think that that's why people feel disappointed by it. And I understand that. Now, do I like it? Yeah, personally I do. You know what I mean? It is what it is, but that's my opinion, I just think that right now, YG's old model is struggling to resonate with the current moment. I think the Deadline EP really is shaped by contracts and corporate realities more than it actually is like an artistic endeavor. I think that the classic Blackpink group dynamic that defined their peak years, to be honest, guys, I think people need to realize that it is effectively over. What basically remains is just the contractual obligations, and that's really all we're gonna get from Blackpink the group. If you're looking for interesting artistry from them, look to their solo work. I thought that Ruby was an incredible album. I thought that Rosie was a very solid effort. I actually think that I really like Jisoo's EP as well. I love Earthquake. Earthquake. Uh, I like that. I like that EP a lot. I don't want you guys giving me shit. We know the name of the EP is Amortage, okay? We know. And I think that people were too hard on Lisa's alter ego, you know? So I really think if you want to see artistry from those girls, that's where you need to be looking. You don't need to be looking at the Blackpink project. Because at this point, all it is a contractual obligation. So that's just my opinion. That's what I think. That's what I think is going on with the Blackpink EP. That's my 10 cents. Hopefully you guys learned something, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for your patience. I know I've been gone for a while, but I am happy to be back, and I'm back in packing heat. I've got more videos coming today. So I'll see you guys later. Bye.